The evening breeze was unusually warm for late October in New York City. Lillian Carter adjusted the cuffs of her tailored navy blazer as she stepped out of the sleek black sedan. Her reflection caught her eye in the car window. A picture of precision. Her sharp cheekbones and piercing gray eyes radiated confidence, but her tightly pressed lips told a different story. This event was the last place she wanted to be. The charity gala buzzed with energy inside the converted art loft. Fairy lights hung from the industrial beams, casting a soft glow over the crowd of patrons mingling around vibrant paintings and sculptures. At the center of it all was Sophia Bennett, effortlessly commanding attention. Her auburn hair tumbled down her back in loose waves, and her bohemian-inspired dress seemed to move with her, as though she were an extension of the art she so passionately championed. Lillian scanned the room, already annoyed by the cacophony of voices and clinking glasses. She reminded herself she was here for a client, a high-profile CEO who had insisted this gala was the perfect place to bolster his company's philanthropic image. Sophia noticed the polished stranger the moment she entered. Lillian's striking presence was hard to miss, but her air of detachment was what drew Sophia's attention. She watched as the woman maneuvered through the crowd with the grace of someone who was used to commanding respect, her back straight and her gaze cool. Sophia approached her with a practiced smile, curiosity piqued. "Good evening. Enjoying the event so far?" Lillian glanced at her, her professional mask firmly in place. "It's lively." Sophia arched an eyebrow at the dry response, her smile not faltering. "I suppose that's one way to describe it. I'm Sophia Bennett, the gallery owner." "And you are?" "Lillian Carter," she said curtly, extending a hand. Sophia took it, her grip firm but warm. "Lillian Carter," she repeated thoughtfully. "That name sounds familiar." "I'm an attorney," Lillian replied. "Perhaps you've heard of me through mutual acquaintances." Sophia chuckled softly, her gaze flickering with amusement. "Not exactly. Your name was on the RSVP list. I like to know who's attending my events." There was the first spark of tension. Lillian's expression didn't waver, but she felt a flicker of irritation at the subtle challenge in Sophia's words. "It's always good to do your homework," she said smoothly. "Indeed," Sophia replied, her tone light but her eyes dancing with mischief. Their conversation meandered into more neutral territory, but the undercurrent of tension remained. Sophia found Lillian's restraint both frustrating and fascinating, while Lillian was disarmed by Sophia's ability to disarm her. They bickered briefly over the merits of modern art, Lillian claiming it lacked structure, and Sophia countering that its freedom was its strength. "Perhaps it's too spontaneous for someone who thrives on control," Sophia teased. "Or perhaps it's too chaotic for someone who pretends to understand it," Lillian retorted, a rare smile tugging at the corner of her lips. The banter was interrupted by a moment of silence. Their eyes locked and the noise of the gala faded into the background. Sophia's playful demeanor faltered, replaced by something more vulnerable. Lillian, caught off guard, felt an unfamiliar pang in her chest, a mixture of intrigue and unease. The connection was fleeting but undeniable. Sophia was the first to look away, her heart inexplicably racing. She laughed lightly as if to shake off the moment. "Well, Miss Carter, I hope you'll find some art here worth your precious time. And I hope you'll find a way to sell all of this," Lillian replied, her voice steady but her pulse unsteady. They parted ways, but the encounter lingered in both their minds. Sophia couldn't shake the image of Lillian's guarded expression, and Lillian found herself distracted by the memory of Sophia's vibrant presence. That night, as they lay in their separate worlds, each woman replayed the brief exchange, trying to make sense of the strange pull they felt toward someone they were certain they shouldn't want. Neither knew it yet, but their carefully constructed walls were already beginning to crack, letting in the faintest glimmers of something neither had planned for. Destiny, as it turned out, was already at work. The late afternoon sunlight filtered through the tall windows of Lillian's office, casting a golden glow across the neatly arranged papers on her desk. She leaned back in her leather chair, pinching the bridge of her nose as her assistant knocked and stepped inside. "Miss Carter, there's someone here to see you," the assistant said, her tone hesitant. "She says it's urgent." Lillian straightened her posture, her professional demeanor snapping into place. "Who is it?" Before the assistant could answer, Sophia Bennett strode in, her presence filling the room like a sudden gust of wind. Lillian's gray eyes widened slightly, the only indication of her surprise. Sophia, wearing a deep green coat over a flowing dress, looked both furious and desperate. "Miss Carter," Sophia began, her voice sharp, "I need your help." Lillian stood, her expression neutral but her curiosity piqued. "I wasn't aware we had an appointment." Sophia's jaw tightened. "We don't. But apparently you're the best lawyer in town and right now I need the best." "Have a seat," Lillian said coolly, gesturing to the chair in front of her desk. She waited until Sophia sat, her movements tense, before continuing. "What seems to be the problem?" Sophia hesitated, clearly unused to asking for help. "My gallery. Someone filed a complaint claiming I'm in violation of zoning laws. If the claim goes through, I'll be forced to shut down." Lillian studied her, noting the frustration and fear just beneath her defiant exterior. "Zoning violations are serious. Do you have any documentation to refute the claim?" Sophia reached into her bag, pulling out a folder and slapping it onto the desk. "I've got contracts, permits, everything. But the paperwork doesn't seem to matter to whoever's behind this. They want me out." Lillian opened the folder, her eyes scanning the documents with practiced efficiency. "This isn't the kind of case I typically handle," she said evenly. Sophia's eyes flashed with anger. "I didn't come here to be told you're too busy, Miss Carter. I came because I've been told you can win cases no one else can." For a moment their gazes locked, tension crackling in the air. Finally Lillian sighed. "Fine. I'll take a look. But this won't be easy and it won't be quick." Sophia exhaled in relief, though her pride kept her from expressing gratitude outright. "I'm not asking for easy or quick. I'm asking for results." The first meeting at Sophia's gallery was as tense as expected. Lillian arrived precisely on time, her professional attire a sharp contrast to the eclectic and colorful surroundings of the space. Paintings in bold strokes and vibrant hues covered the walls, and sculptures of abstract shapes dotted the room. Sophia was waiting near a canvas she'd been working on, her hands streaked with paint. She looked up as Lillian entered, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "You're punctual," she remarked, a hint of sarcasm in her tone. "I'm thorough," Lillian replied, setting her briefcase down. "Let's get to work." Sophia led her to a small office at the back, cluttered with sketches, books and half-finished projects. Lillian cleared a space on the desk, her movements precise and methodical. "You should really consider organizing this," Lillian said, her voice laced with disapproval. Sophia crossed her arms. "And you should consider loosening up, but here we are." Their working dynamic was strained at first. Sophia found Lillian's calculated approach frustrating, while Lillian struggled to ignore Sophia's passionate outbursts. During one particularly heated discussion about strategy, Sophia finally snapped. "Do you always treat people like numbers on a spreadsheet?" she demanded, her voice rising. Lillian's eyes narrowed. "And do you always let your emotions dictate your decisions? That might explain why you're in this situation." The words hung in the air, cutting deeper than either intended. Sophia's eyes glistened with unspoken hurt, and Lillian, caught off guard by the sudden vulnerability, softened her tone. "Sophia," she began, her voice gentler, "I don't mean to dismiss your feelings. But if we're going to win this, we need to be strategic." Sophia looked away, her jaw tight. I've worked so hard for this gallery. It's more than a business, it's my life." For the first time, Lillian saw the depth of Sophia's passion. It wasn't just a fight to keep her gallery, it was a fight to preserve her identity. The realization unsettled her, stirring something she wasn't ready to confront. Their interaction grew more complex as the case progressed. Despite their differences, moments of understanding began to surface. Lillian admired Sophia's determination, while Sophia found herself intrigued by the cracks in Lillian's armor. One night, a critical breakthrough in the case required them to work late. Rain pelted the windows of the gallery as they pored over documents. The tension between them, always present, seemed amplified by the intimate setting. Sophia stood behind Lillian, pointing at a paragraph in a contract. "Here. This clause might be our key." Lillian turned, her face inches from Sophia's. The proximity was electrifying. For a moment, neither moved, the air thick with unspoken emotion. Sophia's breath hitched, her voice barely a whisper. "Lillian." But just as quickly Lillian pulled back, her expression unreadable. "We should focus," she said, her voice strained. Sophia nodded, stepping away, though her heart raced. Neither could deny what had almost happened, but fear held them both captive. As the rain continued to fall outside, the storm within them grew stronger. The crisp autumn air carried the faint scent of wood smoke and fallen leaves as Lillian parked her car outside the modest brownstone in Brooklyn. She checked the address again, unsure why her heart was racing. Sophia's invitation had come out of nowhere, a brief text the night before. "Dinner at my place. Consider it a thank you. Bring an appetite." Lillian wasn't sure why she'd agreed so easily. Normally she'd politely decline such offers, maintaining the boundaries of professionalism she held so dear. But something about Sophia had worn down her defenses, and now she found herself walking up the steps to a door painted a vibrant shade of teal. Before she could knock, the door swung open, revealing Sophia in a simple yet elegant dress that hugged her frame. Her auburn hair was loose, falling over her shoulders in soft waves. The faint scent of jasmine wafted from her, mingling with the aroma of something rich and savory cooking inside. "You're early," Sophia said with a teasing smile, stepping aside to let Lillian in. "Habit," Lillian replied, her voice steady even as her pulse quickened. She handed over a bottle of wine. "I wasn't sure what you were making." Sophia glanced at the label and grinned. "Perfect. Come on, I'll show you around." The brownstone was a reflection of Sophia, eclectic, warm, and full of life. The walls were adorned with her paintings and photos of her travels, and the furniture was an inviting mix of modern and vintage. Lillian found herself drawn to a large canvas in the living room, a swirl of deep blues and golds that seemed to pulse with emotion. "That one's called Resilience," Sophia said softly, coming up behind her. "Painted it after things fell apart." Lillian turned to her, seeing the flicker of vulnerability in Sophia's eyes. "It's beautiful." "Thank you," Sophia murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. For a moment the air between them shifted, charged with an unspoken tension. But Sophia broke it with a smile. "Come on, let's eat." The dining table was set with mismatched plates and candles that cast flickering shadows on the walls. Over dinner they fell into an easy rhythm, their conversation ranging from light banter to deeper topics. Lillian found herself laughing more than she had in years, surprised by how easily Sophia drew her out. "You're different tonight," Sophia observed, tilting her head. "More relaxed." Lillian smirked, swirling her wine. "Maybe it's the wine." Sophia leaned forward, her gaze steady. "Or maybe it's me." Lillian's breath caught, but she quickly masked her reaction. "Confident, aren't you?" "When I'm right," Sophia quipped, a playful glint in her eyes. They moved to the couch after dinner, the atmosphere becoming more intimate as the candles burned lower. Sophia sat close, her knee brushing against Lillian's, sending a jolt through her. She reached for the wine bottle, pouring another glass and offering it to Lillian. Their fingers brushed and neither pulled away. Sophia's hand lingered, her touch light but deliberate. Lillian's heart thundered in her chest as their eyes met, the air thick with a tension that had been building for weeks. "Sophia," Lillian began, her voice low, "this probably isn't a good idea." Sophia tilted her head, a small, knowing smile curving her lips. "Why not?" "You know why," Lillian replied, her resolve wavering under Sophia's steady gaze. Sophia set her glass down and shifted closer. "For someone who always knows the right thing to say, you're struggling right now." Lillian's lips parted, but no words came. Instead she found herself leaning in, drawn to the warmth and softness radiating from Sophia. Their faces were inches apart, and when Sophia reached up to touch Lillian's cheek, it was as though the last barrier between them shattered. The kiss was tentative at first, a soft press of lips that quickly deepened as weeks of suppressed longings spilled over. Lillian's hands found Sophia's waist, pulling her closer, while Sophia's fingers tangled in Lillian's hair. The world outside fell away, leaving only the two of them and the sound of their breathing mingling in the quiet room. When they finally pulled apart, their foreheads rested together, both of them catching their breath. Sophia's eyes searched Lillian's, her voice barely a whisper. "I've wanted to do that since the gala." Lillian smiled for the first time that night, a genuine, unguarded smile. "You're impossible." "And yet here we are," Sophia teased, her fingers tracing lazy patterns on Lillian's arm. They stayed like that for a while, lost in each other, until Sophia took Lillian's hand and led her upstairs. The bedroom was dimly lit, the moonlight streaming through the curtains. They stood facing each other, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. Sophia reached for Lillian's tie, loosening it with a slow, deliberate motion. "Are you sure about this?" Lillian asked, her voice rough with emotion. Sophia nodded, her gaze unwavering. "Yes." "Are you?" Instead of answering, Lillian cupped Sophia's face and kissed her again, pouring everything she couldn't say into that one moment. What followed was a tangle of limbs and whispered words, their bodies and souls colliding in a way that left no room for doubt. For the first time in years, both women allowed themselves to be vulnerable, tearing down the walls they'd so carefully constructed. As the night wore on, the lines between them blurred, their connection deepening with every touch and sigh. By the time they lay entwined under the covers, the weight of the world felt lighter. Neither spoke, but the silence was filled with an unspoken promise, a willingness to explore what they'd found in each other, no matter how terrifying it might be. The soft hum of jazz played in the background as Lillian sat at Sophia's kitchen counter, nursing a cup of coffee. The sun streamed through the large windows, bathing the space in golden light. It was a rare moment of peace for Lillian, a woman used to the relentless pace of her life. Sophia, standing barefoot and radiant in the morning glow, handed her a plate of toast topped with avocado and poached eggs. "Simple but good," Sophia said, smiling as she sat across from Lillian. Lillian returned the smile, feeling the warmth of it spread through her. She had never imagined herself in this kind of moment, quiet, intimate, and unguarded. It was disarming and comforting all at once. "You're full of surprises," Lillian said, taking a bite. Sophia laughed softly. "Cooking isn't that surprising, is it?" "Not the cooking," Lillian replied, her voice softer now. "Just, you." Sophia's eyes lingered on her, something unreadable flickering behind them. She leaned back, tracing the rim of her coffee cup with her finger. "You're not what I expected either," she admitted. "When I first met you I thought you were cold, arrogant." Lillian finished, raising an eyebrow. "Unreachable," Sophia corrected, her gaze steady. "But now I see there's more to you. Layers you don't let anyone see." Lillian looked away, her chest tightening. Sophia had a way of getting under her skin, peeling back the carefully constructed walls she had spent years building. It was exhilarating and terrifying. Sophia hesitated before speaking again, her tone more serious. "I think we're alike in some ways. We've both been hurt. We both keep people at a distance." Lillian stiffened slightly, sensing where the conversation was headed. "Sophia, I just want to be honest with you," Sophia interrupted gently. "If we're going to, whatever this is, I want you to know me." Lillian nodded cautiously, her gaze wary. Sophia exhaled, her expression shifting to something more vulnerable. "There was someone once," she began. "I loved her deeply, but it ended badly. He wasn't just a lover, she was a part of my dreams, my plans. And when it all fell apart, I felt like I lost a piece of myself. He betrayed me in ways I didn't think were possible." The words hung in the air, heavy and raw. Lillian's grip tightened around her coffee cup as the memory of her own past clawed its way to the surface. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the months of questioning everything, it all came flooding back. Her face remained calm, but inside a storm raged. Sophia, unaware of the turmoil she had triggered, continued. "I know it's not fair to bring that baggage here, but I wanted you to know. Because if you're waiting for me to be perfect, I'm not. I can't be." Lillian stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I need to go," she said, her voice clipped. Sophia's face fell, confusion and hurt flashing in her eyes. "What?" "Lillian, This was a mistake," Lillian said, cutting her off. Her walls were back up, her tone detached. "I shouldn't have let this happen." Sophia rose, her voice trembling. "Why are you doing this? You know how I feel, don't pretend you don't." Lillian shook her head, her expression unreadable. "I can't, Sophia. I just can't." Without another word, she grabbed her coat and left, the sound of the door closing echoing in the silence. Days turned into weeks. Lillian buried herself in work, but no amount of distraction could erase the memory of Sophia's face or the pain in her voice. She told herself it was for the best, that she was protecting them both from inevitable heartache. But at night, alone in her apartment, the emptiness felt unbearable. Sophia, meanwhile, threw herself into her art. Her canvases grew darker, her strokes more erratic. Each piece was an outlet for the hurt she couldn't put into words. She told herself she had been foolish to hope, that Lillian was just another person who couldn't stay. Yet no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the ache of missing her. One rainy evening, Sophia made a decision. She grabbed her coat and headed to Lillian's office. The city streets were slick with rain, the sounds of cars and footsteps muted by the downpour. By the time she reached the building, she was soaked, but she didn't care. She marched inside, ignoring the curious stares of the receptionist and other staff. When she reached Lillian's office, she pushed the door open without knocking. Lillian looked up from her desk, her expression a mixture of shock and something softer. Relief, maybe. "Sophia," she said, standing. "What are you?" "You don't get to run away from this," Sophia interrupted, her voice shaking but resolute. "From us." Lillian frowned, her defenses rising. "There is no us, Sophia." "I told you." "No," Sophia snapped, stepping closer. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to pretend there's nothing between us just because you're scared." Lillian's jaw tightened, her hands clenching at her sides. "You don't understand. Then help me understand," Sophia shouted, her voice cracking. "Tell me why you're so afraid to feel something real." Lillian's composure finally broke. "Because it hurts, Sophia," she yelled, her voice raw. "Because every time I've let someone in, it's ended with me picking up the pieces." Sophia took a step closer, her voice softer now. "So has mine. But I'm here, Lillian. I'm standing right here." The silence between them was deafening. Lillian's chest rose and fell rapidly, her eyes searching Sophia's. Finally, she closed the distance between them in one swift motion, her lips crashing against Sophia's in a kiss that was anything but gentle. It was desperate, fierce, a collision of frustration, desire, and unspoken emotion. Sophia responded instantly, her hands gripping Lillian's shoulders as if afraid to let go. The world around them disappeared, leaving only the heat of the moment and the sound of their breaths mingling. When they finally broke apart, their foreheads rested together, their eyes still closed. Sophia's voice was a whisper, trembling with emotion. "Don't push me away again." Lillian swallowed hard, her voice equally unsteady. "I don't want to." And for the first time in weeks, they allowed themselves to hope. The gallery was alive with energy, its walls adorned with Sophia's latest works. The pieces were vibrant, full of raw emotion, and spoke volumes about the journey she had been on, both professionally and personally. Guests wandered through the space, glasses of wine in hand, murmuring words of admiration. Yet for Sophia the room felt hollow. Standing near a sculpture she had finished just days ago, she scanned the crowd with a practiced smile. She hated to admit it, but a part of her hoped to see Lillian walk through the door, even though she knew it was unlikely. Their last encounter had left her shaken, the kiss lingering in her memory like a haunting melody. But the days that followed were filled with silence, and Sophia convinced herself that Lillian had made her choice. She turned away, focusing on a conversation with a collector, when a familiar figure stepped into the gallery. Lillian stood just inside the entrance, her tailored suit immaculate as always, but her posture betrayed a hint of uncertainty. She held a single white lily in her hand, its delicate petals trembling slightly as she gripped the stem. Sophia froze, her breath catching in her throat. The collector's voice became a distant hum as her gaze locked on Lillian. Time seemed to slow, the noise of the gallery fading into the background. Lillian's eyes searched the room until they landed on Sophia. She hesitated, then began walking toward her with deliberate steps. Sophia felt her heart hammering in her chest, torn between the urge to run and the desire to stay rooted in place. When Lillian reached her, she extended the flower awkwardly. "I thought this might be appropriate," she said, her voice softer than Sophia had ever heard it. Sophia took the flower, her fingers brushing against Lillian's. "You came." "I did." Lillian looked around, her gaze lingering on the paintings. "Your work is incredible." Sophia crossed her arms, trying to shield herself from the flood of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "Why are you here, Lillian?" Lillian took a deep breath, her shoulders stiffening as if bracing for impact. "Because I can't keep running from this." "From you?" Sophia's eyes narrowed, skepticism flickering across her face. "You've been running for weeks. What changed?" "You," Lillian said simply. She stepped closer, her voice trembling with vulnerability. "You changed me, Sophia. I've spent my entire life building walls, convincing myself that being alone was safer. But then you came along with your fire, your passion, and you You made me feel things I didn't think I could feel anymore. Sophia's heart ached at the sincerity in Lillian's voice, but doubt still gnawed at her. And now you're ready to tear down those walls? Just like that? Lillian shook her head. No. It's not that simple. I'm scared, Sophia. Terrified, actually. But I can't keep pretending that this doesn't mean something to me. You mean something to me? The weight of Lillian's words hung in the air. Sophia looked away, her voice quiet. How do I know you won't disappear again? You don't, Lillian admitted, her voice breaking. But I can promise you this, I don't want to. I'm tired of running, of hiding. If you'll let me, I want to try. With you. Sophia's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. She had spent so long protecting herself from the pain of disappointment, but in Lillian's eyes she saw the same fear and longing she felt. For a moment she was silent, weighing the risk against the possibility of something real. Finally she looked up, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. I'm scared too, Lillian. But I'm tired of being scared. A small, tentative smile crossed Lillian's lips. Does that mean? Sophia didn't let her finish. Instead she stepped forward, closing the distance between them, and kissed her. The kiss was slower this time, filled with tenderness and the weight of unspoken promises. The gallery around them seemed to disappear, the murmurs of the crowd fading into nothingness. When they pulled apart, the world came rushing back, but neither of them cared. The smiles on their faces were genuine, unguarded. I guess this means you'll be seeing more of me, Lillian said, her voice light but her eyes filled with emotion. Sophia laughed, the sound warm and free. I think I can live with that. As the evening continued, they moved through the gallery side by side, the tension that had once defined their relationship replaced by something new, hope. The future wasn't certain, but for the first time they were willing to face it together. In the quiet moments after the gallery had emptied, Sophia leaned her head on Lillian's shoulder, the two of them sitting on a bench in the center of the room. The white lily sat between them, a silent testament to the beginning of something neither had planned for but both were ready to embrace. Destiny, as it turned out, had other plans. And for once, neither of them was running.